The yew tree. From poison arrows to cancer breakthroughs. Welcome back to my channel. You know, I always try to bring you the hottest, most intriguing, most compelling videos I can. But every once in a while, you get a comment like this one on my video about medieval medicine, which says, "Oh my God, I'd love to hear about the origin of modern pharmaceuticals." And lo and behold, sometimes you get inspired by those comments. That's exactly what led to today's video about the fascinating history of aspirin. So let's talk about the weird origin of a popular medication. This is interesting, but if it's anything like what I'm going to show you right now, it's going to be beyond bizarre. Right now, we're sitting here looking at a picture of an evergreen tree with these creepy red things hanging from it. And yes, I know it looks nice. It's the perfect Christmas tree, right? Well, no. What we're looking at is a yew tree, and the chances of you seeing one in real life are incredibly slim. Unless you're watching this from Europe, in which case, well, go outside and take a walk in the woods, and you'll find one. And if those red things didn't tip you off, the word you definitely will. That's right. That's where we got the nickname yew tree. Yes, for those of you who haven't heard that before, this is apparently a common nickname for the yew tree. Though I certainly hope nobody calls it that when they're trying to sell it to you as a Christmas tree. Anyway, it's so fitting that this looks like a Christmas tree, because they used to deck these things with ribbons and hang ornaments on them, only for the purpose of putting them in someone's coffin. That's right, if you ever find yourself buried beneath a yew tree, just know that you are chosen, because the yew tree is not a friend to humanity. The yew tree has a long and storied history, thousands of years old, with some individual trees older than the Roman Empire itself. They're also incredibly hardy, resistant to rot and insect infestation. Even fire doesn't bother them, and they grow slowly, which means they have time to develop their favorite special talent: being deadly. As you may have guessed, every part of this tree is poisonous, except for maybe the fleshy part of the fruit. But even that has the seeds in it, which are so toxic that they have to be ground up to even cause harm. The rest of the tree, though, is a quick ticket to cardiac arrest. The leaves, the buds, the roots, the berries, the wood, all of it is loaded with toxic alkaloids, called taxines. So if you're anywhere around this thing and start feeling funny, you'll know what happened. Just ask King Siriart of Brittany, who died in 578 CE after drinking some yew wine, or read up on the Anglo-Saxon princess Ethelflaed, whose death in 980 might have been caused by poisoned mead made from yew berries. And during the Crusades, the European Christians encountered an even bigger problem: the assassins, a group of Persian Muslims who apparently dipped their bread in yew poison and used it against their enemies. They were so secretive and effective that they earned themselves a reputation as an order of murderous specters. But fear turned to respect when they realized they could use the tree's power for their own benefit. By the Middle Ages, people were using yew branches for archery. That's because the wood bends easily into a bow, and more importantly, it's tough and durable. Yew boughs were light, strong and flexible, perfect for a long hunt. In fact, England had a monopoly on yew boughs for most of medieval history, importing them from France, because at the time, the English yew tree was going extinct. A good thing, too, because by the Middle Ages, they were mostly restricted to churchyards and monastery gardens. The toxicity meant they were perfect for graveyards, since they were essentially rodent-proof, and monasteries kept them because they liked the mystery and drama associated with them. After all, the Bible mentions the tree of life, but it also warns against the forbidden fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Sounds an awful lot like a yew tree to me, but again, that's a whole other story. The point is, people in the Middle Ages avoided yew trees, and for a long time, that's all anybody cared about. Yew as a material for boughs. But in the 19th century, German physician J.F. Maley found a new use for it. He discovered that a certain alkaloid in the leaves could stop the contractions of smooth muscle, and he applied this to treating asthma. Then in 1902, researchers isolated a different alkaloid and dubbed it taxine, because, well, it was toxic. But the next big breakthrough didn't come until World War II, when Allied troops found the Germans were using yew extracts as a treatment for malaria. Unfortunately, the war ended before much research could be done. Fast forward to the 1960s. Scientists at the National Cancer Institute were on a mission. Screened thousands of plants for potential cancer drugs, and deep in the forests of the Pacific Northwest, they stumbled across the Pacific yew tree. They stripped some bark, did some lab magic, and discovered a compound that could stop cancer cells from dividing. They named it Taxol. Now, how does it work? In simplest terms, cancer cells are basically that one guy at the party who won't stop reproducing himself. Taxol steps in like a bouncer, grabs the cell's skeleton, the microtubules, and locks them in place. The cell can't divide. Partí over. Taxol went on to become one of the most important chemotherapy drugs of the late 20th century, especially for ovarian, breast, and lung cancers. Lives were saved, and the yew tree went from sinister cemetery ornament to medical celebrity. Unfortunately, it didn't last long. See, they were getting their yew bark from the US Forest Service, who weren't thrilled to learn what the NIH was doing with their dead trees. The process of extracting paclitaxel required stripping the bark off living trees, which killed them. Which is something you shouldn't do if you're trying to preserve a rare species. So everybody worried that the NIH was going to wipe out the American yew tree the same way they'd wiped out the American passenger pigeon. Suddenly, the world had to choose between cancer treatments and cute woodland creatures. But that didn't last long either, because chemists managed to synthesize paclitaxel without any tree parts at all, then patented it and gave it the name Taxol. Now, the yew tree can breathe a little easier, but it's still pretty busy. These days, scientists are still finding new uses for it, like protecting your brain from Alzheimer's disease or fighting the bacteria that causes tuberculosis. Who knows what other secrets this old tree is hiding. But in the meantime, you can still visit it in some cemeteries. Just don't think too hard about the irony. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Medicinal Mysteries. If you enjoyed our little stroll through toxic botany, don't forget to subscribe, share with a friend, and maybe hug a tree. Just not a yew.